All right. I think we're live if I did this correctly. Um, what's up, everybody? I brought on Pepe this time. If you guys don't already know him, sharp friend of mine. He's active on Twitter and really respect his opinion. So I'm sure you guys will be interested in what he's got to say. What's up, Pepe?
What's up, bro? I think, this is the first time we've done Broke a Card Down before, so I'm looking forward to it. What are your overall thoughts on the card as a whole?
I don't hate it. I think it's both good, like as a fan and for betting. I mean, it's I think we'll be able to make some money for sure. What do you think?
So the overall vibe that I got from this card is that they're matching up a lot of people that they kind of want to get rid of with fighters that they want to build. It seems like a lot of intentional matchmaking to push a certain fighter. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some certain A sides. I think there's a lot of chalk that I like. I'm gonna kind of uh, point it out throughout the card, but there's certain legs that I think might even still be plus EV at big chalk, and yeah, I'm definitely gonna be having some parlays on this one for sure.
Yeah, like even with like Zalal and Qatar, Cannonier Rodriguez, there's a lot of fights where Catlin Souza Hill, where it's just like huge age disparities and clearly like a changing of the guard type matchmaking. That's the A side doesn't always win, so you can't just like bank on that, but you can definitely tell promotionally what they're trying to do in a lot of these matchups.
For sure. Yeah,
Do you have
no.
do you have any big pre-fight spots that you got in early?
I do. I'll get to that. I'll get to that at the actual fight once we get there.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about anything else before we like get into the very first fight?
Yeah. So I sent out a tweet last week, and it was because the past few weeks I've been having huge CLV on a few spots. There was the Fereziem and the Tatiana Suarez. I know you had a bunch of CLV on Alexander. I actually ended up getting late to that one, and it didn't end up playing out. And I had sent a tweet out to see if how important CLV is to specific bettors. And I was curious what your thoughts were. Like, if you make a sizable play and you think that the market should be in agreement with you and you get a ton of CLV, obviously you feel good. If there's a good bit of resistance, maybe after like 40 cents and it starts moving against you, do you start getting worried that maybe you missed something or there's some information that you're not thinking about for your plays? How do you view those situations?
So if it's an extreme line move, the most obvious example being like the James Krause Minner fight, if obviously if it's something, super extreme, yeah, red flags are going up. In general, once Bet Online goes to $20,000 limits and that's able to marinate for a few days, like that's the weighted average of some pretty sharp people, because 20K isn't too low for 99.99% of bettors to get involved. So I definitely put some respect on that. I maybe earlier in my betting career, I might have doubled down on certain positions where the market goes against me.
Mm-hmm.
I find that just kind of leads to some selection bias in terms of my biggest stakes of the year are going to be on the spots where I've got the biggest disagreements with other winning bettors.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to make it so that my biggest positions are in agreement with the market. So I'm there's certain fights where I'm more confident in my number than other ones. Like just to give an example, like last week when I bet Taliesin Teixeira, I got a pretty good bit of market resistance, but
Mm-hmm.
I was really comfortable with 60%, just given all the advantages in the fight, all the tangible advantages. So there's certain times where I care more than other ones. But yeah, no, it's definitely a thing. Not the end of the world. There's some big groups out there that aren't as sharp as the small guys going early in the week. Just because you're betting bigger doesn't necessarily mean you're smarter. And I've come to meet some of these bigger groups, and I sometimes don't even think that they're as good as some of the guys that are firing on $500 limits at Bet Online. So yeah,
Yeah, I remember because I usually follow your plays or see at least what you're on, and generally speaking, you're kind of like I am, where we usually release a play like Monday or so, maybe like a week later. We wait till the limits are good and it's market available. So it's not like we're guaranteed to get a ton of CLV because we're not hitting Bet Online like what's at like $500 or $1,000 limits. And, even so, you're still able to get CLV consistently. I remember there was a Oki versus Duncan where you had a really good number on Oki. He was like minus 150, and then he went out to like minus 250. And then there was a ton of strong resistance against Oki and kind of brought it back to the number that you played on. So situations like that, you kind of just like let it be and not double down.
Yeah, exactly. Like in a spot like that, I realize there's plenty of people who disagree with me, within the margin of the VIG. And I'm not going to get off my position altogether or start second guessing my number
Mhm.
necessarily, but I'm just not going to add on to it because those are the spots where there's endless liquidity to get down on. And, sometimes it's great, but oftentimes, like you said, you could have missed some sort of detail along the way. We all make mistakes for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I want to do a better job at documenting my plays that get a ton of CLV and end up winning versus the ones that lose. Because, like, for instance, Ziam was like plus 190 and then he went off around plus 120, and it was very correct. Then I played Suarez plus 140 and she closed minus 140 and it wasn't even near correct. So it's hard to take too much from these market moves too. And we only get to see the fight play out once. So there's only so much we can garner from that too.
For sure. Sure.
All right, let's jump into it.
Got Buddy Tyrone apparently in the house. That's good shit.
Oh, big fan of Buddy.
Yes. All right. All right. We're gonna get into it. All right. First fight, we got Jacqueline Cavalcanti versus Julia Avila. Pepe, I think Cavalcanti is your girl at this point. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's fair to say. I played her at pretty big chalk in her past two fights. Here in this spot, I do think she gets the win, but I'm not willing to lay the juice on her here because I don't really necessarily think Avila will have grappling success, but she is a black belt, and I do tend to give women who are like second fight off pregnancy, they usually look a lot better than their first fight. I can cite the Mackenzie Dern example, and then even Yana Santos when she had that terrible fight post pregnancy against Holly Holm, where she got completely ragdolled, and then the next fight against Chelsea Chandler when she's not facing a step up in competition, she was like almost career best. Now, I don't like what I see from the Avila side as far as training. Her physique doesn't look great. It doesn't look like she's at a major gym. So I don't have any faith in her. Overall, I'm just completely passing on it, though.
Yeah, I don't have anything either. I actually do tend to lean more towards like if you're asking me which side still has some EV on it, I actually would gun to head say it's the chalk side versus the long dog shot here. Just to me, it looked like Avila's athleticism has kind of completely abandoned her at this point. And maybe like you're saying, it's putting too much stock into her first fight post pregnancy because we have seen girls come back and put out better performance the fight following that. But I mean, I don't have Misha Tate rated very highly at this point, and that looked like a massive levels gap. I would have Cavalcanti favored over Misha Tate easily. Oh shoot, Moy's audio pointing out that this could be a carousel fight. That's
Yeah, I think he likes Avila.
Uh-oh. Sharp guy. Yeah, knee surgery too. Yeah, these are good points. These are good valid reasons to maybe not lay minus 750 or whatever. So I cannot.
Dogfather likes the under.
Boy,
I
that
don't
just feels like
really.
pain, man. Betting on
Yeah,
these Cavalcanti unders.
I don't really think Cavalcanti has great finishing instincts. I think she can hurt her, but I've never seen her. She's hurt plenty of girls and didn't finish them. So just based on that premise, you could probably target her unders moving forward. But yeah, Avila is kind of scrappy.
It feels like if she's ever going to finish somebody, it's probably somebody like Avila, just where there's this big of a potential skill gap, and I mean, she's 36 years old. This could very well be her last fight in the UFC. So if it's ever going to happen, it's probably at this level, but I kind of lean towards it never happens.
Yeah.
All right. Next one, Walter Walker versus Dante Mays. I mean, as ugly as it sounds, I'd probably lean towards dog here. I mean, let us not forget it was Dante Mays' whizzer that ripped John Jones' shoulder out the socket. So this man has a mean whizzer. Yeah, I mean, Walter Walker to me, just his game is pretty loose. His top game is loose. He's dropping for heel hooks and he's going for crazy submission attempts and losing position. I don't like his cardio. I can't say much good about Dante Mays. I mean, he seems like his athleticism is greater than what he's ever put together in the UFC. It seems like he had a lot more potential than what we ever got out of him. He's just a bit of a head case, a fish off of his back. So if I had to play the fight, I'm going for a little shot on Dante Mays, but I'm definitely not interested. What do you think, Pepe?
I played Walker early in the week at minus 186. Grappling and wrestling at heavyweight is kind of a cheat code. We've seen Curtis Blades make the most of his skill set and, just be able to run over guys who have grappling disparity. And we've seen Mays get grappled multiple times. And Walker, he's, for as much as, he's never had like a great performance, but he's only 27 and he looks like he's in the best shape of his career. And Mays looks like he's in the worst shape of his career and he's been grappled multiple times. It kind of seems like a little too easy. I know Ozzy likes the GTD. That could potentially be a decent play, especially if you're kind of leaning towards Mays. He's not a huge finisher.
No, I think Mays is a pretty good GTD soldier. I'm not so sure about Walter, though. Walter's kind of a madman. Like, he's a tough one to bet GTDs on for the most part. No, I can't hate on the thought process because, like, could I see him just 30-27ing Dontel sitting on top of him in guard while Dontel does nothing? Yeah, I mean, I definitely could see that. But, yeah, not my strongest read. All right. Vince Morales, Elijah Smith. Do you like anything here?
I took Morales at plus 155. I didn't get the best of it, but I still, what's he now? He's around 115 now. So there's been a ton of move. It's pretty much been one way on him. And yeah, I do like the Morales side in this fight. I think I'm not huge on this Elijah Smith guy. I think that he is one of these fighters who really needs his wrestling in order to win fights. I think he's just a little too green on the feet, and his cardio seems to be a pretty big issue. Not only was he finished in round 3 by Cortez, but he slowed down horrendously on Contender Series against Tao, who's pretty low level. And I rate Vince Morales fairly high. I mean, dude, he was somewhat competitive with Lapilus in a very, 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 very difficult stylistic matchup. And, he showed that he still has athleticism. He still has 15 minutes of cardio, toughness, wrestling and grappling looked pretty good. He was able to get Lapilus down in round 3. So, even on the regional scenes, he was getting opportunistic submissions late in the fight. I think that's super live against Smith, who tends to be more of a wrestler, but doesn't have the cardio for it and seems a bit wilty. Anytime someone's getting finished on the regional scene in round 3, it's not promising, going into the UFC.
Yeah, no, his cardio is definitely a bit of a liability. Like watching that Contender Series fight, like at this weight class, at that pace, you would hope he's able to keep it for 15 minutes and he slowed down pretty horrendously. So like that alone is enough to keep me off of Smith here. But if you told me he's not going to wrestle and he's just going to sit behind a low kick and a jab and try to play the outside game here, I mean, I know it's been high-level guys who have done that to Vince Morales, but he just does not change his game plan one bit. Like even a guy like Miles Johns, who you can get to him, if you push the pace, he just refused to do anything besides the exact same footwork that he tried in round 1 and rounds 2 and 3. And he's just really easy to resign to a 30-27 loss. If there's one thing I like about Vince Morales' game, it's his like folk style wrestling get-ups. Like I think he's really urgent to turn his back, fight the hands, get up. He's not just going to let you use some basic wrestling and hold him down. You're going to have to throw hooks in. You're going to have to do more to keep him there, which is what makes me think that if it does turn into Elijah Smith going to his roots and shooting takedowns, mixing that in, I think he will get tired. And I think he probably does get beat up a bit here and lose the later rounds. But yeah, I just don't know what he's going to come out with. I feel like if you're a good coach and you're able to sit there and watch Vince Morales' career, it's pretty clear the game plan. The game plan is he doesn't check low kicks, and he's not going to shift his game plan at all if you're able to beat him on the outside. And I think the striking cardio of Smith seems a bit better than his grappling cardio. His grappling cardio seems really bad. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of dependent on which game plan we get out of Elijah Smith here. So
yeah, and what Morales is going to do also, because narrative wise, he is on his second stint with the UFC. He was super upset when he got let go last time, and he continued to grind, and like he fought really well on the regional scene, always pleading to get back in. And they're like, okay, we'll let you come back in, but you're fighting Taylor Lapilus in France. And he took that fight and he gave a good account of himself. So this is his first winnable fight in the UFC. I would say that his career is on the line. If he loses this fight, he's probably done, and they'll feed him to like either a huge prospect or this is the last fight. But if he makes a statement, and especially if he gets a finish in this fight, then he could potentially get a 3 to 4 fight new contract. So I think it's a huge moment for him, and it's a fight where Elijah Smith could get a veteran lesson and have a fine career going forward from. So I just think it means more to Morales. I know that's hard to cap in, but I don't know.
No, that's valid. I mean, certainly guys, when they have their job on the line, they're more likely to put in a proper camp and put in a good game plan and whatnot. So that all makes sense to me. Yeah. All right. Let's get my Tapology. All right. Next one, Gabriel Bonfim versus Chaos. I have a feeling you're going to have a stronger take than me, so I'll let you go first again.
Yeah, I like Chaos in this fight, and it's all because of his hardware. The guy has insane hardware, and they fight at 185, 170. But at these higher weight classes, hardware just means so much more towards, being a successful fighter. And, Chaos, what's his record in the UFC? 5-2. He's got 5. He has a knockdown in 5 out of 8 fights. Really great power. I know he doesn't have good technical striking. Like his footwork is really sloppy and not good at all. But the guy seems to be really, really good hips. 80% takedown defense. Has a ton of power. 5-inch reach advantage. And yeah, I don't really see Bonfim running through Chaos. I've never seen Bonfim have like really, really good wrestling. So I think it's going to be a stand-up fight on the feet. I think it probably goes a little later into the fight, and Chaos has shown that, he has a good chin. He can go 15 minutes. People want to shit on his striking, and I get it, but at the end of the day, he has a ton of power, and he's been able to put up pretty decent striking stats in his fights that go the distance. Had a close decision with Randy Brown, who I rate a bit higher than Bonfim. Brown is a quite solid. Michel Pereira, much better striker, a lot bigger, faster. Chaos was pretty competitive with him. And so I do kind of rate them on a similar level. And Bonfim obviously has the better technical skills, and he's going to be a bit faster, but I don't know if anyone's ever leg kicked him much. He hasn't faced a ton of adversity. A lot of the guys that he blew through in round one are pretty low level. Ange Lusa didn't really have the power to make him pay. And he went 15 minutes, but it was super, super tepid. I kind of felt like Lusa was letting him off the hook a bit, and that, he wouldn't have been able to be so comfortable in the pocket against someone who can strike as hard as Chaos. So I think Williams is live in this spot. So yeah, I like him at plus 185.
Yeah, forced to bet the side. I agree with you. Just given the gap in durability, in a fight like this where they're going to potentially bang in the pocket. To me, like the questions in this fight are all around Chaos's grappling. I just feel like we haven't really seen him pushed against a real good jiu-jitsu practitioner, and I tend to lean towards he's going to be a tough guy to finish. If there's one thing I know about him, it's just with strikes, it's incredibly hard to put Chaos away. I actually kind of got baited into fading him a few times just off of his regional tape. His regional tape, I don't know if you ever went back and watched it. It's horrible. Like it's just limbs flailing all over the place, like no idea what he's doing, zero process whatsoever. But he's kind of come into the UFC and steadily improved upon his game. So I could see if he's going to cover, I think he's going to submit Chaos. I think it would be something like he's able to tag Chaos with a flurry and then jump on his neck or land a quick takedown. And running through like someone like Trey Waters, pretty impressive. Not a complete fish, has some skills, long guy, and looked like nothing on the mat. So I feel like if it's going to happen, it's going to be a submission. So that's kind of the way I have a hard time imagining him knocking out Chaos. Chaos is taking like full on overhand haymakers from Semmelsberger and like having his whole head spin around and like barely flinching afterwards. So the guy's built different for sure. And then the other thing is Bonfim's cardio. Like his cardio is just, it doesn't seem to be very good. He's again, one of those fast twitch guys who just genetically no matter how hard you train, it's nothing to do with the fact that how dedicated he is to training in the room or anything like that. He just genetically is never going to be a guy with elite cardio. I don't really know exactly where Chaos's cardio is at either, but I would assume it's probably a bit better than Bonfim. So yeah, if forced to pick a side, I agree with you here. What's up, Marcus?
Yeah, do you think that Bonfim is going to take him down in round one? I struggle to see him getting takedowns like as the fight goes, for sure.
Yeah, what's like sub round one? That to me feels like if he's going to cover this price tag and look like a big favorite, it probably is a round one sub, honestly. Like it would be Chaos has no idea what he's doing to protect his neck, blast double leg, quick transition, Chaos taps.
I think Gabriel Bonfim can tap like most of the division in round one. So
right.
But the guys that he's beating are guys that he should be beating. Giles, Lizez. I just think Chaos is potentially a difficult matchup for him. As long as Chaos doesn't get caught in round one, but at the same time, Bonfim can't get caught in round one either from one of his wild punches. And Chaos kind of reminds me of Buckley a bit, where they're just like super unrefined, but like the more serious they take their career, you could tell that they like weren't training that much early in their career, and just athleticism and hardware has been able to take them a bit further than other fighters who might have better technical skills.
Right. Yeah. Generally when I'm fading Chaos, I'm looking for someone who's going to play the outside game. Like I was on Michel Pereira and Randy Brown and whatnot.
Those are high level guys, though. Those are like two of the better technical strikers of the division.
Right. And it's hard to imagine that Bonfim's going to bring that same game plan. He's not going to sit on the outside behind a jab and just outclass Chaos and make him exploit the gaps in his striking as much. It's going to be just dick swinging contest.
Chaos was like almost a pick 'em to Randy Brown too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the other thing. With those type of guys, I also love just playing like points props against Chaos because his chin is just so damn good. It's just so hard to imagine someone finishing him with strikes. But here, yeah, it's a bit weird because like we said, probably round one sub would be the most logical way for Bonfim to cover.
Yeah, Baeza was the only other fighter who's really tried to grapple him, and he almost submitted Chaos in round 2 with the leg lock. And like Chaos is just like, I'm not fucking tapping, and basically toughed it out, and then was able to fight through it and end up finishing him. So I do think that, potentially he might have a grappling hole that, could be exposed. So this is probably one of the more intriguing and exciting fights on the card, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, this one for me is intriguing and exciting. Rafael Estevam versus Jesus Aguilar. Man, I feel like Jesus Aguilar has been running so good in the UFC. Like I feel like essentially, I mean, I'll give him the Shannon Ross knockout, but outside of that, it feels like just meme central. I mean, I thought he lost the fight to Mendonça. I thought he just pretty clearly got out grappled. They gave it to him off of a few moments in the fight. What was the other one? I mean, I bet Stuart Nickel there. I'd probably do it again at like, the early prices and whatnot. He's so willing to play off of his back. He's got the shortest reach in the history of the UFC. He's a negative athlete. The guy works as a Mexican restaurant owner, for the most part of the year. Like negative upside in the UFC. I didn't think he'd be here this long. I was hoping to maybe get like a little bit of a better price on Rafael Estevam, but to me, this is like a real fighter versus a not so real fighter. I'll give him, he's got heart and he's got a guillotine, like he's hanging in there with 5 rounds for Chairez and then finding your spot. Like that says something about you. He's a tough, gritty guy, but it's just winging overhands with no process at all and prayer guillotines. To me, Rafael Estevam is not going to go out soft like Stuart Nickel. He's going to understand how to defend a guillotine choke. He's got some super legit wins. Keeping up a grappling pace over Charles Johnson to me is pretty damn impressive. Like Charles Johnson's going to make you work, and he didn't look like completely dead in round 3. So to me, that says whenever he wants a takedown here, he's going to easily get it. And I don't really see what Jesus is going to have for him. I think Jesus is just, it kind of reminds me like when you do jiu-jitsu, there's been times where I've had the feeling where like I'm rolling with a guy and I genuinely think this guy is better than me at jiu-jitsu. He's just more skilled, but he's just so small that it's just easy for me to maneuver around his body. He's just simply too small to deal. And that's how I view Jesus, even in this weight class. I think he's just too little and not enough athleticism to deal with someone like Estevam. So I think Estevam's going to probably cover this price tag and mug him. So I would put Estevam's going to be in some parlays for me. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I revisited some tape on this one because I was looking at it. I wanted to cap it from a totals perspective, and I was thinking about playing the over 2.5. But upon rewatch, I actually think Estevam is going to submit him in round 1 or 2. Honestly, like the way Tyra just blew through him and was able to get him out of there. So like he spent like 2 minutes in a guillotine, and then after that just like sliced through, went to like had him in a triangle, then transitioned to armbar. And I think Estevam can do the same thing. I think his grappling looked pretty solid against Charles Johnson. But so the submission prop is like plus 185. FanDuel actually has fight ends by sub plus 155. I think that's pretty solid because then you cover yourself from a potential round 3 guillotine from Aguilar. But I do think Estevam is going to get a submission in rounds 1 or 2. I think he's going to be able to slice through his guard and get him in mount, land some ground and pound, and then eventually get a rear naked choke. Yeah, I'll say rear naked choke round 1 or 2 for Estevam.
I like it. Yeah, no, I think just the grappling here is going to look so easy. Like the way Mendonça was maneuvering around him, just slamming him to the ground with a body lock, passing around his guards so quickly. I mean, I think there's
he's not even a good grappler at all.
No, I mean Estevam would completely mug that guy, So yeah, that's a huge skill gap for me. All right, next one, Angela Hill versus Ketlin Souza. To me, from my perspective, it seems like Angela Hill is also one of your girls just after cashing that sub prop against Pinejo. That was such a good
Yeah,
one.
that was awesome.
What do you think about this fight?
Yeah, I've had a pretty good read on Hill, and this fight is interesting, honestly. I've kind of been going back and forth on this one. At first I thought I was gonna like Hill, and then going back, like, because you think about Souza, and she kind of checks a lot of similar boxes as D Gomes. So you can, like, in my mind, I was using that fight as an analog for what would happen in this fight. And even that fight was in Brazil. But then you think about it, and you're like, okay, Angela Hill looked really good and she took over that fight. But she is now 40 years old. She was 38 when that happened. And so at some point, there's going to be a pretty decent drop off in performances, just overall physicality, and physicality matters so much in WMMA. Like, just the slightest amount of extra strength can be, the reason why you spend a whole round on top rather than not get a takedown and then allow the other fighter to hit you with a bigger shot. Like, I think she's in danger of, she's definitely gonna get landed on clean. Sousa's boxing and striking is pretty clean. I do think she can potentially hurt Hill. Hill's been hurt, and the Mackenzie Dern foot. Mackenzie Dern isn't really known to hurt anyone with strikes, and Mackenzie dropped her in round one. What was the other fight that she got hurt in round one? Amanda Lemos. I know she's a big hitter, but she's up there in age. Sousa's striking is actually pretty damn good when she's fresh. I think the question of the fight is what happens in round 2 or 3. I think most people probably think Sousa is probably going to win round 3 or round 1, and then Hill is going to win round 3. I tend to lean with Sousa, honestly. Although I don't have any interest at like this pick'em price. It's I think overall it's just going to be a really close Angela Hill split decision type fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, at first glance here, I felt like just another chance to bet Angela Hill at this level in the division. Like, generally, when you get her against this tier of girls, she's going to just be a bit more experienced, a bit better in the clinch, a bit more volume, and she's good at. She's gotten better at winning decisions. She used to kind of not put stamps on rounds, and she got robbed a million times. I feel like now she's gotten a bit better at getting her optics right to win some of these rounds, wrestles a bit more and whatnot. But when I've been wrong about Angela Hill, it's usually been a speed thing. And I kind of get the same vibes here on this fight. Like, it reminds me of when Angela Hill fought Tisha Torres. And I thought Angela Hill was going to get the better of her there, just being a bit longer, more volume, different advantages, clinch and whatnot. And she was just too damn slow. And every time they wanted to engage, it seemed like Ketlin was able to, I mean, not Ketlin, the Tiny Tornado was able to get the jump on her and win a bunch of those exchanges just off pure speed. And when I was taping this, I kind of get the same vibe. I feel like maybe Hill's just a bit slow, and Ketlin's going to be able to win some of those important exchanges just by being a bit faster to the punch. But I like the experience for Hill here. I think she could push her up against the fence, land knees, land elbows. She's got some different ways to make this fight interesting in terms of making it more than just a striking fight. But yeah, no bet for me as well.
Do you think that? Because I kind of think that the small cage will help out Souza, because Angela Hill, her footwork is generally one of her strong suits, and you don't really get to exploit that advantage as much in the apex. What I did notice against D Gomes is that, and D Gomes and Souza kind of strike similar in the sense that they want to back you up, and it's going to be easier to back Hill up in the small cage. And when Hill gets backed up, and she'll allow combinations thrown on her, that's like really where Souza shines. And Gomes was able to do that early in round 1, kind of hurt her a bit. So yeah, I'm definitely leaning the Souza side, but it's tough to fade Angie at pick'em when you have a fighter who's not going to grapple her. And like, if anything, Hill is going to have the grappling upside in this fight. I mean, Marnik Mann was taking Souza down in round 3. She's never had a good gas tank. Wouldn't that be something if Hill hit another late round submission prop?
Is there value? Are we going to call out the special round 2 sub or something?
Uh, this time it's got to be round 3, bro.
Ooh.
It's round 3 is 50-1. Souza's been finished in 4 out of her 5 losses, right? A lot of those happen pre-UFC, but I don't know. She kind of does seem a bit wilty to me, honestly. Like, I think she's going to be tough early, but she doesn't seem like the kind of fighter who likes to fight through adversity.
Hey, I'll say last time I heard Pepe mention any Angela Hill sub props, the community made a lot of money. So I don't know, maybe store that one in the back of your head. All right. Jose Delgado versus Connor Matthews. I'll be pretty brief, but to me, Connor Matthews is a complete jobber. He gasses out. He's not super durable. His wrestling isn't very good. He's going to try and push a pace that he can't really keep. Isn't he one of these New England cartel guys? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, these New England cartel guys, I mean, they don't really put game plans together too well. I don't think. I don't really love that camp in general. I'm pretty low on them. But yeah, to me, Connor Matthews, no athleticism, no real upside in the UFC versus Delgado. I could see him potentially turning into some sort of UFC commodity. I mean, the guy's at MMA Lab,
yeah,
right? Yeah, he's at MMA Lab. The guy hits hard. Seems like his cardio is better. It seems like his defensive grappling is solid enough. I tend to think it's like a round 1 finish, but I think it could come at any time. Even at big chalk numbers, like really big chalk numbers, I lean towards throwing Delgado in a parlay versus torching money betting on Connor Matthews in the UFC. What do you think, Pepe?
Yeah, Connor Matthews is not him. You know what we saw in the Bazooka fight was that he was able to be relatively competitive with a really low level UFC competitor. But what I really did not like seeing in that fight is that when he got rocked, so he gets rocked, he goes down, the guy covers up. Like, I don't like to bet on fighters who cover up when they get hurt. He basically threw the towel in. Like, other guys, they get rocked and they try to bring them in to grapple them to shake the cobwebs and fight through it. This guy showed that he doesn't have the heart. He's been finished multiple times, twice on the regional scene, once against Bazooka. This is a tee-up spot. It's on the main card. I think he's going to get finished, knocked out at some point. Could be a submission, though, because if it's a club and sub. So, yeah, I don't know what round it's going to come in. I think if I'm going to play anything, it's going to be the ITD at evens.
No, yeah, that's hard
His
to argue.
pace is Delgado's got crazy pace, dude. It's impressive. I think he's got a fair future in the UFC. You can't teach that kind of pace. He's only 22 years old, and he seems like his big weakness is getting taken down. So that's probably Matthews' win condition. But yeah, definitely Delgado spot.
Yeah, I think I'm even lower on Bazooka than the next guy. To get paced and finished by Bazooka, to me, tells me you're just absolutely not ready. Like, I agree with Moyes. Like, this is a Cage Warriors jobber if I've ever seen one.
He's like 31 also. It's not like he's going to be making huge improvements. And yeah, that camp sucks that he comes from.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Adolfo Vieira versus Andre Petrosky. Do you like anything here?
No, I don't. I really don't. This is just a tough fight. It's an interesting fight, but I think it's somewhat volatile. I don't really like Petrovsky as someone that I generally want to put my money on. He's shown that he's flaked out way too many times, and I do rate Adolfo Vieira. He just brings like a weird element into all of his fights because you never quite know what you're going to get from him. Obviously, he's got world-class grappling, but you never know how great his cardio is going to be. At times it looks like he's kind of chinny, like the Saparov fight, like Saparov rocked him early, but it seems like his striking has come a long way and that he has shown improvements even in the cardio. the fight against the Stoltzfus win is actually aging pretty good, and that was a pretty clean performance. But don't you think it's possible that Petrovsky is able to just kind of get on top? And while I do think Vieira could like sweep him early in round one, I think as the fight wears on, if Petrovsky's able to get on top, he might be a little too heavy for Vieira to really throw anything up or sweep him or anything like that. I don't know, man. It has. I wouldn't be surprised if Vieira is able to submit him early. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a sweaty kickboxing match that's kind of back and forth. It's a tough fight to call. So I don't have a clear read on a total or a money line. I'm just interested to watch it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't really know if Petrosky's going to gas out in the pace that we get here from Vieira. I think you mentioned the Stoltzfus fight. In that fight, his jab looked beautiful. Like he's pumping out. I think striking wise, I actually prefer him technically over Petrosky. In terms of Petrosky wrestling Vieira, I mean, he's not like one of these IBJJF guys who's like used to guard pulling and whatnot. He's like an ADCC grappler who can actually wrestle a bit. So I don't think it'd be easy. And his cardio's look good. I mean, outside of the fluffy fight, I mean, which like it's fluffy, you push an insane pace against a guy who never gets tired ever. So you can't fault him too hard there. But I generally want to bet against Petrosky at chalk if in a fight where like I know his cardio gap is going to get pushed, and there's going to be, you're going to see him gas out. I just don't really know if we're going to get that here. And generally, if I'm laying this big a chalk, I want to have a real clear image in my head of how the fight's going to go. And I just don't know exactly how this fight's going to go. I don't really know who's going to push wrestling, if anyone's going to push wrestling, if it's a striking fight. If it's a striking fight, I think the line's fine. I mean, if Vieira's getting on top, he's maybe value. But yeah, there's a whole lot of questions for me, and I don't have the answers.
Yeah, because I think if Hidalgo gets on top in like round 2 or something, the fight's probably going to end shortly after. I would assume that he's going to get his patent arm triangle choke, and like Petrovsky's not going to survive that. So that's why I'm not super interested in a dog shot or taking the over, because I just know that like the fight could be over like if Hidalgo gets him down in round 2.
Right. I mean, this guy went out from like a hip check from Malkoun. I
Right.
mean, yeah, like so maybe one weird jab or one weird sequence. Who knows what's going to happen with Petrosky? All right, this one will be interesting. I think we got some differing opinions here. Ismail Bonfim versus Nazim Sadikov. This was one of like those plays you asked me earlier if I got on anything early. I did like lay around -150 on Bonfim in this spot. I generally don't believe in Sadikov in the UFC too much. I just athletically, to me, he's not there. I like his forward pressure, and his cardio is quite good. He's got really good cardio, and he pushes a really good pace, and he won't fuck off. He's going to keep on going. He's going to try and hit you with the big left hand, mix in grappling here and there. I get all that, but at the same time, like I was backing, Evan Elder against this guy on the basis that like I saw gaps in his technique. And so I have to go back to the well with a guy as solid as Bonfim. To me, 65%, 65-35 is right where I had it set. So I'm not sure if the price is still around there. Let me look real quick. Yeah, it's still sort of right around there, 65-35. To me, that feels perfect. So when it comes to the striking, pretty much I just think he's a little bit of a level above just about everywhere. Straight shots a bit better, footwork considerably better, just a bit more of an educated process. I see him out there making reads, giving someone to think about with feints, and then kind of making plays off of that. I think if he's going to lose this fight, it's going to have to be predicated on cardio, and maybe by round 3, Nazim's getting to him. But I think that we're going to see Ismail Bonfim getting enough respect with his hands and the low kicks potentially to keep the pace somewhere that he likes it. Because it's just, I think it's going to be tough to just be a zombie and walk through Bonfim and gas him out. I think that he's going to get hit with some big shots. So I'm getting dropped by guys like Evan Elder. I think he'll have to resign to the back foot at certain points in this fight. So like I think that will allow Bonfim's cardio to come through. And then he's just got a whole lot of different upsides. I think he's got more finishing upside. I think he's got the, all the big damage upside. I think that if anyone's going to get low kicks going, it's definitely going to be Bonfim. Yeah, I think he's just a bit more put together in the wrestling as well. So I just generally view Bonfim as a guy I'm looking to back in the UFC, and Sadikov to me is someone I'm generally looking to be on the other side of in the UFC. So yeah, I think the line right now is perfectly fine, 65-35. What do you think?
I think the fight's going to be a little more competitive than you're giving it credit for. I do understand like how Bonfim has some advantages, but I think Sadikov could potentially get some grappling success in this spot. Like we haven't seen Bonfim, his get-ups, were solid in certain spots, but okay, he fought Vince Pichel. That fight doesn't really tell me anything for a fight like this. And fight before that, Benoit Saint Denis is just body kicking him like 5 times in a row and then taking him down and submitting him. And I get Saint Denis is like a powerhouse. He's a brute and his grappling is pretty good, but I don't really know how good he is. And I do think Sadikov has been working on his grappling a lot. He's somewhat early in his MMA career. So I do think there's going to be room for improvement in between a lot of these fights. And I like what I've seen in his short UFC run. The fight against McKinney was pretty bullish, I think, because he was largely untested in grappling. And I thought he showed a ton of good fight IQ. And in that fight and securing the choke really easily. I know McKinney melts, but he was doing the right things to properly defend himself and then, put McKinney in some bad positions. And I think he could potentially get Bonfim in some bad grappling positions and then be somewhat competitive on the feet. He seems like he's got really good chin. So I'm not worried about the durability. He seems very tough. He doesn't seem like a quitter, and he can crack too. So overall, I think it's a pretty competitive striking fight where I favor Bonfim ever so slightly, and then I have the grappling upside on Nazim's side. So that's enough to get to a play for me.
Sweet. I don't know if are you as like rigid with your numbers where like you come down to like I think it's 60-40, or is it more just like I don't know, how do you view that?
Honestly it's different. I don't have like it sometimes it's kind of like a feel, and then other times it's like I'm rigid with my numbers, but I always have a number selected as far as what I'm willing to play it to. So obviously that translates to a percentage.
Right. Yeah, no, I think there's advantages sometimes to going off of more of a feel thing, and other times just to going like real rigid with the number. So
yeah, exactly. So it's like when you see a fight, you could just be like, this is what I'm comfortable playing him to. And so then you make your translation on what you cap him on based on that,
Yeah, for sure. Makes sense. All right. Next one, Edmund Shabazian, Dylan Bugka. What do you think about this one?
I played it early, Edmund. Minus 295. And I just think it's a levels fight. And Edmund has historically shown that he can run through guys of Budka's level. And then when he faces like the top 15 is where he really struggles. But Shabazian is quite well-rounded, and like Budka's upside is potentially grinding out a close split decision where Edmund could win by early knockout. He could win by submission. He could win by decision. So he's got all 3 methods on his side. And I don't rate Budka that high. And I do think Shabazian, he's still in his mid-20s, man. Like, clearly the UFC likes him, and I think they're giving him a layup. Like, How do you go from losing to Andre Petrosky to Edmund Shabazian in your next fight, and it's on the main card? It's clearly a tee up spot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what's his face? Because he's got like his own boxing promotion. I don't know if you've seen this. Like he's a businessman outside the fighting. Yeah, I bet on that kind of contender series, Chad Hanekom against this guy. So like, yeah, it's funny how far the gaps in the competition have come. But yeah, I think he's gonna get ran through pretty quickly. I kind of think it's like round one knockout for Edmund. I don't remember who it was. Someone mentioned Travis Brown elbows, and that's kind of how I see the fight going too. Like it's going to be
that's actually really good.
Like against the fence, and then just Travis Brown elbows and get him out of there.
Or guillotine.
Yeah, I think Butka's going to put his head down and have a ton of damage. Like you think about the Cesar Almeida fight and just how much damage he's able to get off on him on the clinch. He's just a nut hugger, crotch sniffer, however you want to word it. I mean, he does in theory have a path here. Like his cardio is probably better than Edmund, and like if it can turn into just like a real grindy, take you down, get back up again type of fight, he probably he does have a path.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like he's drawn completely dead.
Yeah, but he's probably just damage wise. I don't really see what he's going to do to Edmund. Like he's not going to take Edmund's back and choke him out.
Edmund's pretty slick. Like that liver shot that he hit Mearchart with was really sneaky. I didn't even know what dropped Mearchart until they showed the replay, and then he like caught the liver as he was closing the distance. It was really, really slick. And yeah, he's just he's really opportunistic with his striking. The Tavares head kick, the AJ Dobson KO. It's clear whenever he has these step downs, he finishes them.
Yeah. And I do prefer some sort of early finish prop to the minus 500 at this point, just because you avoid all the equity of him slowing down and gassing out, which we've seen it enough times where he's another one of those guys, like we mentioned before, where just genetically, no matter how hard he trains, like it's not like Conor McGregor doesn't run miles every day. He just doesn't have the genetic traits to go 25 minutes hard. And I view him the same way. He's just never going to be an amazing cardio guy, but at this level, it's probably a sweet finish early. All right.
Yeah, I didn't even see that the line had moved out to 500s now.
Yeah, it's ultra chalk at this point.
Yeah.
Yusuf Zalal, Calvin Kattar, another big chalk spot. I kind of like overs here. I'll see what those are at. I know they took a lot of steam, just because I don't really see a Kattar finish. And Zalal, I mean, he's definitely a better finisher now than he was in his first UFC. I actually don't like it at this price. It's taken a lot of heat. But he's definitely a more potent finisher than he used to be. I mean, he can finish guys on the ground. He does actually sit down on his shots. Like his first stint in the UFC, he was just a GTD merchant. Mm-hmm. And now I see him actually trying to get guys out of there. He definitely could cover here. Like on the feet, I think back to like the Moicano fight. It was a long time ago, but I think all the same holes in Calvin Kattar's game are still there. A guy who's willing to sit on the outside, pump volume with the low kicks, play the Muay Thai game. You can cover a decent price tag just out voluming him on the feet, staying at kicking range, because Calvin's as close to a pure boxer in MMA as we really have at the high level anymore. So on the feet, there's that path, and then also all the grappling upside is obviously with Zalal, and potentially he could just mug him on the mat. I don't think he's Aljamain Sterling, so maybe that's what's causing the line to maybe go all the way out to like the 500-ish type of range, where it almost feels like he kind of needs to have a huge grappling edge to cover this price. Yeah, I'm not going to get involved. I just don't think Calvin Kattar athletically is there anymore after the Arnold Allen fight. Like that was one where I feel like after that was kind of like the last little bit of athleticism he had left him. And so now I just view this as being Zalal sitting on the outside, winning a ho-hum decision while Kattar just kind of continues to look for a right hand that never comes to fruition. What do you
It's
think?
kind of too bad because a couple of years ago he was one of the mainstays of the top 10 and always in exciting fights. And then he has the run out of losing that split decision to Josh Emmett, which a lot of people thought that he won, myself included. And then that was the main event, big fight, and it was just off of the Giga Chikadze. That was kind of like a breakout performance for Kelvin because he had just gotten his ass kicked by Holloway. We can kind of reference that as like the Holloway, Chikadze, and Emmett fights. Those three fights in a row, 15 rounds of just like super high level striking and taking a ton of damage. Obviously did a number on his overall career. Very next fight, he gets a step down in competition, another main event against Arnold Allen. And, he tears his ACL in round 2. Huge injury. He comes back and, he looks slow against Sterling, kind of like you said, he's kind of diving for punches, missing, just really, really bad performance against Aljo. But Aljo is a much better grappler than Zalal. Okay, so how does that translate into this fight? I do think that Zalal is probably just going to have him be just on athleticism, taking less damage, potential grappling upside. So I do get why he's such a big favorite. What I've been trying to figure out is, in my mind, how many takedowns do I think Zalal is going to get? Because I'm kind of trying to think if there's any edges to be had on significant strike props or takedown props. And if Zalal is going to take him down, how successful will he be in advancing position or holding him down? Because early in the fight, I mean, Kattar wasn't like exactly getting grapple fucked by any means. And Aljo is a lot more persistent. Zalal's happy to throw hands and, cause damage on the feet. So Kattar's significant strike props are pretty damn low. They're like, I think it's 35 on DraftKings, which, you don't need him to win. You just need him to land 35 strikes. What do you think about that? How do you see the fight playing out? Do you think he's going to be able to advance position when taking Calvin down? How many takedowns do you think is going to pan out here?
I mean, historically, I actually kind of like Calvin's get up game. Like it's pretty urgent. He's going to
Yeah.
scramble on all fours, get up. I don't know. I feel like to get to this price, though, you have to almost think that Zalal is going to be able to throw in a body triangle and, really get on his back and make it an issue. So yeah, that's kind of what's keeping me off of like declaring value on either side is I don't really know, like once it hits the ground, how Zalal is going to consolidate, if at all. I'd imagine on the feet, Zalal is going to be outvolleying him, obviously, but I do think has a pretty good chance of hitting the over on a significant strike props. I mean, I think it's going to be mostly striking, and I mean Zalal's got a brick head, and I think this fight does go the distance way more often than not. So you're going to have a full 15 minutes to get there.
Yeah, it's only 32.5 for Calvin significant strikes.
Nice. All right. Main event made it all the way there. Shout out to almost 1,100 people here. Jared Cannonier versus RoboCop Gregory Rodriguez. I'll be up front and I'll say I'm a bit biased because I have trained with RoboCop before. Like during the pandemic, he was running all the jiu-jitsu sessions at Black House, and I was there in like those hidden LA gyms, like putting the work in. And he's like as nice of a guy as I've ever met amongst UFC athletes. I mean, he's like all around, his game is super well put together. Like he uses his jiu-jitsu not really to submit guys, but to pin them to the floor and unload ground and pound, which if there's anybody in that division I wouldn't want to be underneath, like Gregory Rodriguez is maybe at the top of the list, the way he throws his ground and pound and how heavy his hips are. But yeah, I'm definitely biased. That's why I'm fully upfront.
So you rolled with RoboCop? Dude,
I
that
wouldn't
would
say
be
rule, but like drilled for sure. You know, like he wasn't never tried with me or something.
heard it here first. Dagestan Poppy submitted Gregory Rodriguez,
Yeah,
and
no, hell no. I definitely did not do that. But so like, there's lots of parts of his game I really love. One of actually my favorite part of his game, which I'm really excited to see how it plays out in this fight, is I love the way he defends low kicks. Um, he just at a super high clip gets his shin turned out. He checks. He has all the perfect reactions. I mean, he puts on a clinic as far as how to deal with kicks to the thigh, kicks to the calf, how to return a right hand, timing it. He's it's super beautiful. And honestly, Cannonier's got a really nice calf kick. You know, he's got one of those like MMA lab, you know, really educated calf kick games. So I'm really excited to see how that battle plays out. Um, I do think somebody gets hurt here pretty bad. I think like whether it's RoboCop doesn't come to win decisions. The only defense he knows is a right hand. Like he's like if you're talking about guys who get hurt and like their reactions, he's not going to cover up and look for a takedown. He's going to try and fire a right hand and knock you out. Like you think of like the Iron Turtle fight where he was on, you know, really bad spot against the fence, gassed out, his chin is not good either. He's got a bad chin, hurt, but he's still going to be firing and he's got crazy power. So I think no matter how the fight's looking, he's live to kill Cannonier at any point. But at the same time, his chin is completely dust. Like it's if he had a great chin, I think he'd be honestly champion of the UFC, just because he's got amazing ground game.
and
He's willing to
cardio.
push through. He's got cardio. His striking, technically speaking, is amazing. He's got great power, but he just can't take a shot consistently. So I could definitely, if I was going to play Cannonier here, I'm playing some sort of knockout prop, just because I think he's got to find the chin. And I think he's got a pretty good chance to do so. But I'm going to definitely. Oh, my dog's throwing up. What do you think, Pepe?
All right. Interesting fight. I do agree with you in the sense that I do expect some sort of violence in this spot. What I did notice with Cannonier in his fight against Kaio, you know, the leg kicks were giving him a ton of issues. He got taken off his feet in round one. You know, that's something like you had mentioned that could be to RoboCop's advantage. If he invests in the leg kicks early, I think that he can really hurt Cannonier. But just the way that RoboCop fights, I do think that there's going to be a finish within the first 3 rounds, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's round 1. Honestly, like you said, his striking is his offensive striking is very good. He has a ton of power. And but yeah, the defense is the big issue. That's why I wouldn't be able to lay the chalk on RoboCop. The thing is, it's like Cannonier, he's 41 years old. You know, at some point, both of these guys have gotten rocked in so many of their fights that, you know, it's inevitable that one of them is gonna die in this spot. And yeah, RoboCop, he was knocked out by much lower level competition. You know, at least when Cannonier's getting rocked, it's by top 10 guys in the UFC. So, but it's like even Vittori, who's got no power, had him on wobbly legs. What's it like that 4 fights in a row that he's been on, you know?
Yeah, his reactions against Kaio were really weird.
Yeah.
Like mob
I
mob,
do. Dude, honestly, I think Kaio is really, really good, though.
I think he could be champion.
Yeah, he could be.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
people, I've heard some people kind of saying that like his striking is not that good, and like that it was kind of like an indictment on Cannonier for losing that fight. But I disagree. I think the way he can switch stances and really hide his leg kicks and his speed and footwork, I think Kaio looked incredible in that fight. And
Yeah, and like the question about him was like his chin and cardio.
yeah,
Both of those looked like elite. So
yeah, exactly. So, you know, yeah, he lost to Imavov and Kaio, but those are 2 top 5 guys. And like before that, like the Vittori fight was probably the best performance of his career, right? You know, he like set a record for amount of significant strikes. So it's you kind of have to assume that, like, in my mind, I'm kind of assuming that Cannonier is going to get hurt and get finished in this spot, you know, just because he can't continue to eat all this damage and then continue to get older. Another fight camp, another weight cut. Now you're 41 years old. The knockout rate for someone 40 years or higher is already through the roof. Now you add like a whole career of taking damage. You took all this damage. The Kyle war was ridiculous because, the fight should have been called. He took a ton of damage in that last round. I thought it was kind of difficult to watch, to see him taking all that damage in that fight. Now, with that whole accumulation against like one of the hardest hitters of the division, like I just don't see how Cannonier doesn't get hurt within like the first 2 rounds, honestly. So yeah, I haven't played anything yet, but I think I'm gonna, after we get off, I'm gonna look at some props and some unders.
It's funny. I don't know how many people know this. RoboCop was actually, I'm pretty sure he was the best man in Jacare's wedding. Either that or the other way around. I'm not sure. But he mentioned that actually, that they're like from like the same exact little village in Manau, I think it is.
In Florida.
If whose chin holds up? So you think he's talking about Cannonier?
I don't know. They both have bad chins.
Yeah, no, they definitely both have bad chins. Yeah, I mean, I'm not an unders guy in general, but it feels to me like there could actually be a bit of value on this under. Just
RoboCop, just all he does is go forward.
Yeah. A sweaty GTD. Oh,
the only way it goes over is if Rodriguez hurts him early but doesn't get him out, and then kind of slows down and just has to, and then it just turns into like a really tepid kickboxing match where they exchange like almost kind of like the Dusko Tudorovic fight versus Rodriguez.
If I'm forced to give you a sweaty GTD, it would actually be the Sadikov Bonfim fight. I actually think that one's gonna be one where everyone's clenched the entire time, but it somehow gets there 15 minutes.
Yeah, there's not
fights. Wow.
The Petrovsky Vieira one would be the sweaty one.
Petrovsky Vieira. Oh yeah, that's a good shout. What's the price on that?
It's like 145 plus 145.
Oh, I honestly thought it would be even bigger. Yeah, but no, that could be a fun sweat. No, this is valid. Like Rodriguez could be more patient. I just know that in general, when he's fighting, his mentality is not like, I'm going to try and bank rounds or how do I win rounds here? It's like, I need to land my right hand. And that's kind of all he's thinking.
The Chaos Williams versus Bonfim could be a sweaty GTD. It's plus 160.
Yeah. I mean, I in the past, I've loved just like a system play of betting decision props against Chaos because he seems like he's just so hard to kill. But
what's his record in decisions? I feel like he's 6-3 in decisions. But yeah, 2 of those were split. I do see a world where this comes down to like a pretty close split decision.
Parlay. I'll just talk parlays real quick. I mean, to me, the legs that I would be looking to parlay, it'd be Esteban because I think he's got a really good chance to cover. It would be Delgado because I'm kind of struggling to see how Connor Matthews wins. And then honestly, it'd probably be Cavalcanti, and then I mean, if I was like dying for plus money, I'd probably add in Zalal. Iterations of those. What do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know if I would rather, you would rather take Zalal than Edmund?
I think so, just because just Edmund is
you're getting 15
head case to me. Like I would feel so dumb laying minus 500 on Edmund for him to gas out in 8 minutes of wrestling. Like that would just be like, man, I could have seen that coming.
Yeah, at least with Zalal, you're getting 15 minutes. So like, if it's like a shitty bet, but like he could squeak it out to keep the parlay going.
Yeah, because like if Edmund starts looking bad at some point, like you might as well tear up your ticket. Like
yeah, right.
But like you're never going to be out of this one with Zalal. Like the guy won round 3 against Taporia, for God's sake. So yeah, that's pretty much all I'm thinking, Pepe. Well, shout out to all over 1,200 people that are hanging out with us live. Appreciate all you. Pepe, where could the people find you for more of your content?
So yeah, follow me on Twitter at Pepe_Sylvia716 and at Fight Numbers, putting content out and plays out on their site. We have a few different betting tools: Odd Screen, Prop Finder, Trends tool, and a solid group community in the Discord. So DM me if you want more information or have other questions about it. Thanks for having me on. Let's do it again, bro.
Yeah, for sure. No, this was fun. I think we got some good information out there. All right. We'll see you all next time.